How's it going, guys? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. In today's video, I've got 4 topics to cover for you guys. The first one is that your Xbox might become a PS3 before your PS5, and that is just simply embarrassing. The second news story is that PlayStation has yet another best-selling console, and it's kind of surprising. Third, the DualSense EDGE is on sale, and I'm going to tell you why you should buy it. And fourth, we have some awesome games coming to the PS Plus Extra Games catalog. Like, so good that I'm actually talking about it. All right, let's jump into the first news story here, which is that your Xbox might become a PS3 before your PlayStation 5. Like, look, out of all the features that Sony has added to the PlayStation 5 or will add in the future, I'm appreciative of all of them, whether it's 1440p support, whether it's activating the extra SSD port on the PlayStation 5, arguably things that should have been there at launch, but who cares? They've added those features and they're there and they're great. The one that I personally have wanted the most, though, that we're still waiting on 4 years into this console's life cycle, is PS3 emulation on the PS5. Not PS Now, not PS Plus premium streaming, full on PS3 emulation. We are 2 generations past that console. There is literally no excuse why Sony can't get that up and running. Thankfully, in the past couple of weeks, we've heard quite a few news stories that are heavily hinting that Sony is going to announce this soon, and then we get the caveat that they're only working on select games. That's not really that bad because the PS3 had so many more first-party excellent games than even the PS4 did, and especially than the PS5 does currently. So even if they are just going to continue to port over like the best of the best, I'm fine with that because that's all I really want. Stuff from the Infamous franchise, stuff from the Resistance franchise, Metal Gear Solid 4, Warhawk, Starhawk, the MotorStorm series, like where the hell is that? Like there are so many games in the first party library that even if they started now and did a couple a week, they wouldn't finish it by the end of this generation. So that's great. It should have been here by now, and now it's looking extra embarrassing for Sony because soon, thanks to an update to the Xbox platform, you're going to be able to turn your Xbox Series X into a PS3 emulator, which is absolutely insane that this is coming to Xbox before it's coming to PlayStation. I get it's not official, right? Like we know that this is a mod and everything like that, but like you can emulate PS3 games on PC. You can emulate them on your Steam Deck. You can emulate them on a literal handheld, but you can't play PS3 games on the PlayStation 5. So let me explain how this is going to work. So if you didn't know this, unlike PlayStation, where if you're a developer, you have to get a development kit for the PlayStation 5, on Xbox, any console can become a development machine. All you have to do is pay Microsoft $20. You get a development account and a special key. You put that into your Xbox and it unlocks developer mode, which allows you to then install pretty much any software you want. And obviously that opened up the door for emulators. So right now you can do anything from the SNES all the way up to like, I think the PS2 or something like that. But there's a new update that added OpenGL/Vulkan support for the Xbox platform, and that has kicked the doors wide open to adding new emulators, including the PlayStation 3. So right now, the PS3 emulator has not gotten fully working yet, but they are working on it, and they've already gotten the 3DS emulator Citra up and running, and I'd imagine that difficulty-wise, those are very similar since the 3DS has a very custom architecture, and it has to emulate games in 3D and sync them down to 2D. Like, it's a very complicated machine. I wouldn't say it's as complicated as the PlayStation 3 because of the cell processor and everything like that, but just because it's not up and running just yet, I don't think it's going to be a long wait for the PS3 emulator to be working either. And this is honestly pretty cool because even if you discount the fact that consoles are kind of like low-powered PCs, the Xbox Series X is a beast of a machine. Like it has 30% more power than the PlayStation 5, but because of the development process, it doesn't actually result in Xbox games running better than PlayStation games. But with that raw power in the GPU, you'll be able to emulate PS3 games probably pretty well, because even if you have a mid-grade PC that's kind of on par with the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, you can already emulate pretty much every single PS3 game and they'll all run just fine. I gotta be real, I have an Xbox Series X. I bought it day one. I played a couple games on it like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Forza Horizon 4 and 5, but I have not touched that thing in a very long time. That's a lie. I did play it a couple weekends ago because I played some Gears 5 Hivebusters with my friends. We beat that expansion in one night, and then I played a little bit of Gears 3 with them. But other than that, I think it had been over a year since I turned it on. Like since I moved into this house last June, so 2 Junes ago at this point, I definitely have not turned on my Xbox Series X. But if I can get a PS3 emulator up and running on that thing, I might do that just because I want to play some old PS3 games on my TV, and it really sucks that the only way to do that is through the Xbox ecosystem. Thankfully, if it does become that simple of a process, Sony will probably pick up on it and say, oh, actually, it is easier than we thought to get the PS3 running on all these different consoles. So maybe we'll actually get this out the door for the PlayStation 5 sooner rather than later. But still, I don't get why Sony drags their feet on stuff like this. It's free money, right? Like, you pay a little bit of money, of course, up front to get that emulator running. But if I already had games in my PlayStation account, I would re-download them. That would give them their coveted metric of engagement because I'd be on my PlayStation 5 more. If I didn't have PS3 games and they went up on the store, I would definitely re-buy them just to be able to play them on my PlayStation 5, because I don't know if you guys are younger, but like, there was something really special about the games during the PS3 generation. Like, that's when I truly became a hardcore PlayStation fan, and it's absolutely criminal that they don't even do HD remasters of these games that they can sell in a triple pack like they did during the PS3 generation with PS2 games. We have virtually nothing. All we get is shitty streaming that doesn't work 90% of the time and makes games that are running at like 720p, sometimes 30 FPS, look somehow even worse than they did back in the day. Like, that is not an acceptable solution if you're asking me, and I don't really see any defense for it being a backbone for Sony to say, well, you know, you can stream them from the cloud, so subscribe to PlayStation Plus Premium. It's not good enough. So on the one hand, it is very cool that the Series X is going to be able to emulate PS3 games. On the other hand, it's extremely embarrassing for Sony that Xbox is going to be able to play PS3 games before the PlayStation 5. That brings us to the second news story though, which is me telling you that I was wrong again. Every time the PlayStation Portal comes up, I'm going to remind you that I said at the beginning, like when this thing leaked, when it was announced, that I was upset and I was like, Sony should be working on a major handheld that can actually run PS4 games. Thankfully they are, but it seems like I was wrong in saying that no one's going to pick this thing up because the data was just revealed and it is the best selling accessory for any console in 2024. Unfortunately, we don't have any raw numbers for this thing, and I personally don't think we're going to get them because success for this device is not really measured the same as a mainline console. Like, it sells for $200 and I'm sure it costs about half that at most for Sony to actually make this thing, because all it is a little Android tablet with a DualSense cut in half and taped to it. Really, like, I know it's a little bit nicer than that, but just breaking it down to the nuts and bolts, that's essentially what it is. So the profit margin has got to be pretty good on it, but like, it's not something that needs to sell hundreds of millions of units or tens of millions of units, right? Like, a success for this thing, I would think, would be selling as much as a PS5 game. And also, I got to point out that this is being grouped as an accessory, not a console. So it's going up against like keyboards. It's going up against like the Pulse Explorer, the Pulse Elite, the DualSense EDGE, the Xbox Series controller, Xbox headsets, racing wheels, stuff that's very niche or like doesn't really sell all that much throughout the year. Like, I'm sure all of those devices were pretty successful, but the attach rate has got to be pretty low on everything like that. So it's not exactly the highest bar to clear, but still, it is cool that a handheld is performing well in Sony's eyes, like better than they thought it would, because that's going to push them in the direction I want them to be pushed in, which is the direction of making a dedicated handheld, right? Like, they just need to do it at this point. People clearly want it, and the fact that handhelds have been kind of merged into a new ecosystem where instead of running a separate fork of games that are developed specifically for that handheld, the ideal of a handheld now is playing console quality games on the go directly from your console, right? Like, the Steam Deck is so great because I can play Elden Ring on it in bed, right? It's awesome. Still, it's awesome to see this thing selling so well. It's nice to see PlayStation's peripheral hardware doing well, and it just backs up that they were smart to kind of center everything around the PlayStation 5 this generation. They've definitely had some duds like the PSVR 2, and I'm sure the Pulse Explorer are not selling well at all because frankly they suck, but like the Pulse Elite, the DualSense EDGE, all the different colorways of DualSenses, the extra plates and everything like that, I feel like all of that is building up to just build more money to go towards game development on the PlayStation 5, and that's ultimately a very good thing. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is about yet another accessory, the DualSense EDGE. So I've been using this thing since it came out, and I gotta say, it's my favorite controller. Again, I'm a little bit of an older gamer. I'm 31, so I came up with the PS2 and the PS3, and I just gotta be honest with you guys, when they switched the thumbsticks, when they went from the DualShock 3 to the DualShock 4, that was a dumb move. The texture of the old sticks was awesome, and the real reason I bought a DualSense EDGE is because I could make it the DualSense I always wanted, a DualSense with PS3 style sticks, and it just gives you so much more control in games like Gran Turismo 7 when you need to make fine-tuned movements when you're on a track and you need to make a tight corner. I've used my DualSense EDGE on my PS5 down here, and I've used the white DualSense that came with my PS5 Slim. The amount of control increases definitely when you're using those old PS3 style sticks. On top of that, it's just a really solid, well-built controller. It feels great in the hand. It feels a lot heavier than what you get out of the regular DualSense, and overall, it feels a lot more durable. It doesn't creak, it doesn't like flex when you're twisting it, or like, it just, you know, it feels like a higher quality controller than the regular DualSense, which obviously it should because it's normally costing $200. Now that price is very high, and as far as I'm aware, it has not gone on sale until now, so I'm saying you should definitely grab it. Right now, it's on sale for $170 at Walmart, and this sale should last to the time that this video goes up because they do week-long deals, and we're right at the beginning of the week when everything started. And I just checked, it is not sold out yet, which is good because every time one of these higher end sort of peripherals goes on sale, they tend to sell out very quickly and then end up on eBay for an exorbitantly higher price because, you know, Sony doesn't make as much of these things as they do other products. The one big caveat with the DualSense EDGE that has not improved over time is battery life. It's gotten a ton of updates. Like, I feel like about once or twice a month I have to plug it into my PS5 to give it some sort of update. And unfortunately, I've noticed that the battery life has stayed exactly the same, and that sucks because the battery life is terrible. Thankfully, I use it on my PC all the time as well, so I can't use it wirelessly on PC because Sony doesn't actually support PC with this controller for some reason. So it's plugged in all the time, which keeps the battery charged. And because of that, I never really run out of battery during a game session, which is great. But still, for someone who doesn't bounce between PC and PS5 like I do, I would assume that you'd pretty much be tethered to the charger that you have next to your couch or something like that, because again, it does come with a 9-foot braided USB cable, and yeah, that thing is just, it's basically a wired controller because the battery life is so bad. I do notice I get more fine-tuned control in Gran Turismo 7 when I'm using the EDGE versus my regular DualSense, like when you're just feathering the brakes going into corners and you're feathering the gas to kind of apex and come out of the corners. It's a lot easier to do that because there's a little bit more travel on the EDGE, I've noticed. And also in games like Destiny, you have the trigger locking, but unlike the Xbox Elite controller, the triggers locking actually registers on the controller, because if you're using a Sparrow in Destiny 2 on the Elite controller, if you lock it to be the shortest pull, you get a low speed Sparrow because it thinks it's not being pulled all the way. On the DualSense EDGE, because of the adaptive trigger technology, when you lock it, it counts that half pull as a full pull, which is great. So yeah, as someone who's put hundreds of hours into this thing, it is expensive at $200 and it's still expensive at $170, but like, it's so good that I think it's worth it. I think all of the stuff is overpriced for PlayStation 5. Like the Pulse Elite headset, while great, still feels like a Pulse headset, so I don't know if it justifies the $200. If you're gonna pick one accessory though in that price range, I would definitely say grab the DualSense EDGE first, because you're gonna notice the improvement in your gaming life quality immediately. Anyway, that brings us to the fourth news story here, which is that the PS Plus Extra catalog has been announced, and the games in it this month are really good. So the first one you're going to get is Remnant 2. I don't know if you guys have ever played Remnant from the Ashes. I know I've talked about it on this channel, but it's really cool because it's a dungeon-based sort of Souls-like game, but instead of using melee weapons, you use guns. It's very gun-focused, and it has a really cool system where it's a roguelite, technically, I would say. Like, you make your way through the game, and it adds in different levels, so you get replay value by playing it multiple times because the layout of the levels changes, but also the actual levels you travel to changes as well, and there's specific guns and specific levels, so you kind of have to re-roll your maps a couple of times if you want to get the AK-47, for example, which is great. I loved that game. I have not played a ton of Remnant 2. I don't even own it, honestly, just because it wasn't performing well when it came out, but it's had a lot of patches since it came out last year, and it's going into the PS Plus Extra catalog. I'm definitely going to download it and give it a try, so if you see me me playing it, feel free to jump into my game. And then a great remaster of a game I played a ton as a kid and also replayed this year, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, the Reunion Edition, like the full-on remake that Square Enix did last year. That's also coming to the extra catalog. If you're into the Final Fantasy VII universe, like you played Remake and Rebirth and you want a little bit more action-focused like gaming out of that series, I feel like Crisis Core is a great game to play. It also fills in a lot of the story that happens in between Remake and Rebirth. It's actually a canon game. Even though the ending isn't really canon, it still is canon. You're also going to get No More Heroes 3, which is a game I played on the Nintendo Switch. If you're into the No More Heroes style of games, this is my favorite one of the three. I thought it was awesome. And finally, you're going to get Mount and Blade 3 Bannerlord, which is a game that my friend Ray, who runs Xbox Ready, he loves it. He's put like 100 hours into it. He sings its praises. So yeah, this is another game I'll be downloading from the PS Plus Extra collection. You know, I think PS Plus Extra, the library that they've been building up over the past year or so, has actually been pretty good. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.